Republicans take back control. On this day in history, November 8th, 1994, for the first time in 40 years, the Republican Party won control of both the U.S. House of Representatives and Senate in midterm elections. Led by Georgia's Representative Newt Gingrich, the Republicans gained 54 seats in the House and 8 in the Senate. The strategy that won them this significant advantage? Cooperation. Rather than campaigning independently in their separate districts, all those who won rallied behind a single national program and message, sponsored and fronted by House Whip Newt Gingrich. Alleging that President Clinton was not the new Democrat he claimed to be during the 1992 presidential campaign, the Republicans were able to offer an alternate to Clinton's policies that resonated with the voters: the contract with America. The contract with America outlined 10 legislative priorities to be enacted within the first 100 days of the 104th Congress. Proposed points included tax cuts, permanent line item veto, measures to reduce crime and provide middle-class tax relief, and constitutional amendments requiring term limits and balanced budgets. Under Gingrich, who had become Speaker of the House, the Republicans were able to pass all but the constitutional term limits amendment within the first 100 days of the new Congress.